The movie begins with a man named Andy, occupying an antique shop. He walks along, looking at the exotic items. A woman we don't see tells him to look at certain plates or bowls. He looks around where she might be, and the woman surprises him with her presence. She says, Singaporeans like to look at the items she mentioned. Andy asks how she knows he's Singaporean. She claims to have met a lot of people to know where they are from. She also tells him all the items have a story behind them. If he picks an item, she will tell him its story. Soon, he sees a boy there that the woman calls Alex. Since she instructs him to help her, he stands from a chair to walk to the woman. As he walks, he looks at the visitor with interest. The chair he was sitting on looks bloody and captures Andy's interest. Then the blood vanishes. The woman is behind the visitor, telling him many people have perished on this chair, but one was different from the others. He is an Indonesian man named Wadi. He entered Thailand to work as a driver. He wanted to have an honest job. However, Wadi never thought it would bring him to the dark side of Bangkok. The next thing we see is him sitting on the chair, being struck by a man. Someone narrates that to survive a situation that brings one close to their demise, one first has to leave fear behind. The man who struck Wadi complains that he can't get anything out of him. He is Krit, who discovered that Wadi is the driver of a man he calls Boss Chai. Now we see the poor man lying in the chair he's restrained to. What makes it worse is he's lying in a puddle. The two culprits doing this to Wadi put him back in the proper position. He gets asked where certain things are. He doesn't speak, so he gets hit. While he receives his beating, he sees someone standing above. Whoever this person is, he is not natural because he disappears. The next scene has Wadi happily holding his baby. He asks his wife if he can have more time. He also says he has to take a job and promises to return. Afterward, he sits in a car as a driver. He witnesses how the man he works for is harassing another. Once the man gets what he wants, he gets in the back seat of the car. He asks Wadi if he listened to them, but the driver answers he doesn't understand Thai. His boss offers him a job that requires Wadi to collect a package somewhere. Since he says he doesn't do this type of work, the boss says Wadi is the one he trusts most. Thus, he agrees to do it. At this moment of acceptance, the word survive appears on the screen. Then we see Wadi being taken by his two captives. He has a bag over his head. He starts to run away and Krit shoots him down. This prompts the other one to yell at him, an action that gets him hit. Back to where we first saw him, Wadi gets asked where something is. He replies he does not know what they are talking about. He speaks English whilst his captives speak Thai. Krit tells him that everyone knows it's him. He switches to English to say if Wadi doesn't want to perish, he should tell him where his things are. He strikes Wadi for not answering before yelling for him to speak, or he will lose his life. He kicks the driver down to the puddle and kicks him a few more times. His partner tells Krit to stop. Later, we see how Wadi keeps getting beaten. Krit says once he finds his substances, he will take Wadi's life. Eventually, Krit has to take a break from delivering pain. If he needs a break, we can imagine the type of break Wadi needs. Krit's partner says that when someone perishes, their spirit will return in 3 days. Soon, Wadi sees someone again. The person vanishes, yet he can still see him walking through the puddle. Now the other man demands to know where the substances are. He also asks Wadi what he's looking at due to him looking at the invisible guy. He is about to hit Wadi but something stops him. He blames Krit for throwing an object at him and Krit thinks he's affected by his fear. Following this, we see the culprits giving a similar mistreatment to another man. He is not as tough as Wadi. Krit takes his life, and Wadi seems to have perceived this somehow. While the culprits are sleeping, Wadi moves on his knees with the chair on his back. He tries to release himself from the restraints. Then he notices the man standing near him. He vanishes, only to reappear beside the culprits. The man is mutilated, moving around irregularly like there was more than one of him. Suddenly, the captives awaken. Krit answers a phone call from their boss. Somehow Wadi has returned to his previous position. The boss informs Krit he found the packages he thought Wadi stashed. Chai said he quit being a driver and knows nothing about the substances. Krit asks the boss what he wants him to do with Wadi, but the boss ends the call. Krit therefore wants to take Wadi's life. As the wicked man points his gun at Wadi's head, the latter remembers being with his baby. Afterward, he sees the man whose life was taken standing near Krit, holding his gun. Krit has a hard time keeping his weapon stable until he says the gun is jammed. Soon Wadi manages to become free from his restraints and jumps on Krit. They struggle on the floor, getting watched by Krit's partner. Once Krit yells for him to do something, the man tries to shoot Wadi. Thankfully, his gun flies out of his hands. Wadi points Krit's gun at him to shoot him to his demise. He shoots the other bad man too. With that done, Wadi perceives a healthy version of the man who helped him. We get a glimpse of the happy life that was taken from him. Back to the antique shop from which this story came, the woman tells Andy that Wadi was the sole survivor. From that point on, no one dared to take another person's life in that place. Andy says he never thought there were such horrors in Thailand. The woman tells him that the more story an object has, the more valuable it is. Andy points to a bracelet on a mannequin and asks if it has a story. Now Alex takes over, asking the visitor if he wants to know who the bracelet belonged to. He says the person who wore it would always hear a voice saying, "Help me." He also says the owner of it was from Singapore, like Andy. One day, the man suddenly disappeared. His girlfriend kept his bracelet and always heard his voice ringing every time she wore it. Approaching the bracelet, Andy gets frightened to hear the phrase "help me" emanate from it. The woman heard he was trapped somewhere in Thailand. She then starts to tell his story. It begins with a young man named Ryan waking up because a water drop fell on his face. The words, "half second," appear on the screen. We hear a radio announcer say that ghosts are everywhere and there is no need to hunt for them. We notice Ryan occupies a jail cell. He has a hard time standing up due to whatever injury he must have acquired before he landed here. He tries to get the attention of the guards by yelling for them to release him. But they aren't listening to him. An unsettling message is carved on the wall for him to see. It reads, "Get me out of here." We barely observe someone fall close by that Ryan hears. Scared, he yells to the guards that something is there. This is the moment a force takes hold of him to remind Ryan of how he drove and told someone he gave up everything he had for them. He complained about being cheated on. As he drove, it looks like he drove past a ghost. Seeing it made him crash into a tree. Out of the flashback, he looks at the bracelet this story surrounds while crying. Getting angry, he throws it against the wall. Yet he finds the bracelet near him in a few seconds. This causes his tears to turn to fear. Heightening it is the unknown thing he sees in the corner of his cell. It is a grotesque being who starts to approach Ryan. Of course, the latter yells to be set free. The being vanishes right before it almost touches him. Ryan is confused regarding where the being went. In a short time, it suddenly reappears to bring him down from behind. Black smoke starts to surround Ryan. Strangely, he sees another him lying nearby. One of the guards is trying to bring him back to life. He tells the others that Ryan had blood exiting his ears. He went to get help, and upon returning, he saw Ryan wasn't breathing. Then the Ryan in the cell sees the shadowy being descend on him. After it enters into him, we get a scene of Ryan being elsewhere with his girlfriend. At first, they seem happy together, but in the successive scene, he drives away from her because of an argument they had. Back in the police station, Ryan wakes up with the guards. His phone is ringing in the other room. The caller is a lady named Kate. One of the guards collects the phone and gives it to Ryan. Once he answers it, Kate says she thinks he is misunderstanding her. Her ex-boyfriend consulted her about this problem. She says there is nothing between them. Kate pleads for Ryan to say something to her. Unfortunately, all he says is, "It's the wrong number." He strangely walks back into the cell room. Following this, the Ryan in the cell abruptly wakes up. It is the opening scene of this story. No one hears him yelling, for he is probably a ghost. Soon we see the other Ryan exiting the station. He moves unnaturally and sees a woman sitting on an elevated platform, seeming very strange. She is probably Kate. Switching back to the antique shop, Andy asks the woman if no one ever saw Ryan again. Alex says the prison he was in has many stories. Other than people, it locks souls too. The woman says Ryan could not remember his life in Singapore. It was like he was a different person. It is because they are different persons. Alex adds. The woman heard that the soul that entered Ryan was not his. When Andy asks where Ryan's soul is now, Alex remarks that Andy seems more interested in the story than the bracelet he's holding. Moving onward, the woman presents a case of knives, but Andy isn't interested in them. They are not merely knives, she says. To their previous owner, they were anger and revenge. Once she mentions a Korean man, we see one screaming briefly. She says all his life, he only thought about the two emotions she stated. Every time the man wanted to take revenge, he would collect a knife. Interestingly, no one knows how many knives he has at home. After he got revenge, he sold the knives at the antique shop. The woman wants to tell Andy the story so he can learn how many knives the man has. The scene shifts to the Korean man, whose name is Song. He says his birthday is tomorrow. He will have a party and 3 of his friends will attend it. Although he calls them friends, he says they ruined his life. He wants them to know the consequences of the things they did to him. With that, the words "Happy Birthday" appear on the screen. Then our attention falls on the 3 friends or enemies riding in their car at night. Meanwhile, Song is preparing food at his home. The one named Champion says he is curious why Song returned to Thailand because he thinks Korea is better. Win says if he was Song, he would never come back here. The driver is Tai, who thinks it's odd that they used to Song, yet he invites them to his party. They eventually arrive at his house. Entering it, they see many balloons on the floor. A young lady is there to greet them strangely without saying a word. She is the maid, whom the trio follows as she brings them to Song. He gloomily welcomes them, and Champion asks him what about the others. They are the sole people he invited, replies Song. He forms a fist while saying this. Later, Tae tells his friends this situation is weird. He sent messages to almost everyone, but no one knows about Song's birthday. Win tells him in high school, Song did not have any friends. He thinks they are his only friends. Tae cannot believe this due to him knowing they made his life hell. Win brushes it off as being ages ago. He thinks no one cares now. When the maid brings them drinks, she starts to emit a strange sound for some time. It is like she's not even human. They are all taken aback by her behavior. In the next scene, the guests are sitting at the dinner table. Champion asks Song again why he didn't invite the others to his party. Tae asks if he has something to say to them. Since Song is not responding, Win quietly asks his friends if they should give him a beating. Song finally says he wants to clear up an issue about their high school years. It has been a long time, and they should talk about it. Win bluntly says harassing him was fun. However, his words are little compared to what Champion dares to do. He stands to bring a knife to Song's neck, asking if they were invited for him to take revenge on them. Soon he says he's joking, and sticks the knife into the table. They are all startled to see that as Song is cutting the meat, he has the knife on his finger. The maid is there to give him a napkin for the injury this brings. Song says if they want to leave, they should finish the steak first. We briefly enter Champion's mind to see how he remembers harassing Song. He was held down and had his hair removed with a knife. Then we see them eating without Song. Tae comments on how strange it was that Song cut himself, but did not even flinch. Win says he never screamed during the times they bullied him. He thinks Song is used to pain. Champion is glad to say Song probably knew that if he cried, they would hurt him more. Tae is most concerned with what is going on. He says he will leave once he finishes eating. Win opposes him, saying they came together and they will leave that way. He also says if Song invited them to get revenge, he will beat him before Song gets his chance. Tae asks if they remember the time he set Song's hair on fire. We learn Win took the photos. Tae tells Champion that the latter recently posted a photo of a hairless Song somewhere. He thinks it must have upset Song. Angered, Champion leans forward to grab Tae by his necklace, telling him to stop trying to scare them. Win takes Champion's hand to rescue Tae, and notices blood dripping on his hand from above. They all look up to see something there dripping blood. It's hard to say what it is. His incident prompts them to start looking for Song in his house. Seeing the maid on the second floor, Champion calls out to her. Since she walks away, he follows her. The second floor is littered with balloons. Tae has a bad feeling about this. Therefore, he wants to leave. Win gives him a hard time for being scared. Due to their fooling around, they fall on the floor and find blood there. Champion turns on the light to reveal something shocking. Song lies lifeless on the bed, surrounded by blood. This puts real fear into the trio. A television is there for them to watch. Thus they watch Song talk to the camera. It is the opening scene of this story. It concludes tragically with Song canceling his contract. Champion checks the camera to see this was recorded yesterday, which is baffling. Tae is scared, thinking what they saw was Song's ghost. What scares him more is he thinks Song won't let them escape his house. Champion uses the knife in Song's hand to stab his leg. He does this to check if he's truly deceased. Such a disturbing action shocks his friends. Soon they see someone walk nearby, so they go to check who it is, but no one is there. Tae says Song's spirit is taking revenge on them and they should leave. Champion wants to call the police. When Tae starts to leave, Champion takes him back. He says there is evidence of them having been there. This means if they don't call the police, they will look more suspicious. Win opposes him by saying Champion is the only one who left evidence by stabbing Song's leg. Champion gets angry that Win is putting this on him. Then their attention gets stolen by Song not being on his bed anymore. They see him floating above and he falls. This scares the friends to run away downstairs. Champion stresses for them not to leave, for they have to clean the mess. If they don't help him, he threatens to tell the police about a certain bad thing they did. Tae yells that Song did what he did to become a ghost to haunt them. Win pushes him down, saying he will turn him into a ghost for his constant fear. Suddenly, the lights go out to continue the group's growing misfortune. Tae turns on his phone light and calls out to his friends. We see Song behind him. Tae walks past his friends, but for some reason, he does not see them. He calls out to them again. Song walks behind him. As Tae walks outside, a hand touches his leg. He soon sees the maid in front of him. She uses a knife to stab him repeatedly. However, from another angle, we see she isn't really there. Now he sees Song, who makes Tae scream in fear. His friends hear him and Win runs to his aid, leaving Champion alone. He goes upstairs to look at the deceased Song lying in bed. Back to Tae, he is scared in the kitchen. He attempts to talk to an unseen Song, saying he is sorry about what they did to him. It was them merely having fun. Tae claims he didn't mean to hurt him. It was Champion who did. The fire incident with Song's hair was really an accident. They just wanted to burn his clothes. Switching to Win, he searches for Tae and thinks he found him. Yet who he found is Song. White liquid spills from Song's mouth. He vomits a lot of it on Win. Trying to run away, the defiled guy falls and hits his head against a chair. It does not stop him from crawling out of the room. Returning to Tae, he tries to leave the kitchen, but sees dozens of knives decorating the floor. He notices he cut himself by stepping on one of them. Thus, he climbs the counter to avoid stepping on more. An unseen Song tells him that after Tae burned his hair, he used a knife to cut it off because he was scared the teacher would see it. Tae shaved him without caring how much the knife was cutting into Song's head. It was covered in blood. Then Song appears behind him, and the fear causes Tae to fall on the active stove top. More knives fall from the counter. As Tae desperately falls to the floor away from the burning stove, he lands on 2 knives, right when they are pointing upward. Shifting to Champion, he focuses on the knife he stuck into Song's leg. The moment he removes it, Song sits up. terrifying his past harasser. In reality though, Song is still lying on the bed. Champion hallucinated what happened. In the meantime, Win tries to crawl away from Song while the latter leisurely follows him. He is enjoying the horror he is inflicting upon those who wronged him. Champion descends the stairs and sees Song, so he starts to throw punches at him. If only he knew that he was actually punching his friend, Win. Champion slams him with an ashtray before he stabs his hand with a dart to the pool table. He does this to Win's other hand too. He perceives Song laughing at him, saying he's not going to perish this way. Champion tries to prove him wrong by using a third dart to repeatedly stab his face. Of course, all he did was take his friend's life. Subsequently, he sees Song come out of the darkness with his maid. Now Champion sees what he did to Win. Song removes the fake injury around his neck that his bullies thought was the mark of the knife wound. He says Champion is an assassin and reveals that some herbs have hallucinatory effects, whilst others allow for one to take trips within their imagination. Song's guests were given both. He also says they never knew he had a disorder, that he never felt pain, but he felt the pain from the revenge. The most painful thing is the pain locked inside his heart. Afterward, he tells Champion that he could either meet his demise at this house or in prison. He gives his harasser a knife prior to calling the police and faking that he's in trouble. Once he gets off the phone, he wonders what choice Champion will make. Later, the police arrive. We see what Champion has decided to do. He lies deceased on the pool table near Win. Song talks to an officer, saying he invited his friends to his party. He lies that since they got drunk, one of them went crazy and tried to take the lives of the others. Song says he managed to escape. The assassin took his own in the end. Back at the antique shop, Andy asks if the disorder Song claimed to have exists. The woman tells him that feeling nothing doesn't mean one won't be in pain. Then someone enters the shop to have tea with them. The person is none other than Song. Andy doesn't know what he looks like from just hearing the story about him, so he does not recognize him. Song gives a suitcase of knives to the woman. Andy guesses that he is Song due to that. Song realizes the woman has told the visitor his story. It is a way to create value for the antiques, he says. This prompts Andy to say the story he heard is not true, and Song asks if it was fun to hear it. Alex answers for him, saying it was because Andy forgot to go to the airport. Hearing this, the man realizes he's late. The woman wants him to take an item with him. Therefore, he takes the bracelet that the second story oriented around. He thinks its owner wants to go home. Song asks him between the torture of being trapped and the torture of being hurt, which is the most painful. Andy says it's the torture of not being able to break free from the pain. As he walks away, he says he hopes to see Song again. Song says Andy is the first person to say that to him. The film ends with the woman telling us to pick an item and she will tell a story.